Hi, this is Kay. After many years of trying to compost in different places we've lived with all different setups, I absolutely have experienced that the composting tumbler is the ideal way. This here, since it drips real juicy stuff that is not good to eat until it's dried out more. See a demonstration with Lilu. She's interested in the smell. Happened to put a little guard up to keep the dogs out. The drips themselves are still a little, too live with super strong microbes, and they're not good for their stomachs. When they've gotten into it, I've had to antidote it with zeolite, which you could actually see on some of my other videos, like how we were designed to eat and critical facts about minerals. Safety first. That was about safety. Many things can go into these. What we love about the two of them is one can be being filled while the other one can be just composting. I haven't clarified, this is kind of a follow-up and kind of an introduction to my composting video, but I've not, in the other parts of the video, clarified what to put in to your compost and what not. All vegetable kitchen waste is fine. If there are any seeds that you don't want to grow from yard waste like weeds, don't put them in there. I've done it before and some of them survived the decomposing process and they wound up in my garden. So what you don't want to do is, besides things like no meat, no oil, no eggs, two things that you would think maybe could go in there because they may have nutrients that you want to compost, do not work. That's eggshells, which means no part of the egg, including the shell, and that's also citrus rinds. They don't work. We primarily do things like papaya, cabbage, carrot, celery, any waste from any green leafy vegetable. Do not put sticks in there if you don't mind it taking, if you mind it taking too long, like little tiny twigs. Watch out for weed seeds, period. So there's a lot of yard waste that you could compost for other purposes. Someplace that you're going to till up every year, I don't do that because then you could till up the weeds at that point. So I just want to clarify that, and now we're going to go on to the rest of the information about the compost. You don't get grubs from having a compost bin on the ground. When you do get grubs from having a compost bin on the ground, the moles will eat the grubs and then you'll have moles. So this is why we gravitated to these. My husband is going to dump some compost into the one that we have going right here. You see what we have in here is kitchen scraps, a lot of mate, yerba mate, which makes this stuff take off like wildfire. And you simply shut it, and then give it a spin. That's why they call it a compost tumbler. And on this side, we've emptied it because it's done its job much more quickly if you put yerba mate leftover scraps in it. Okay. Well, next I'm going to show you how we save it in a bucket to dry out before we use it on our garden. This is a bucket of completed compost, and it's pretty wet, so we'll let it dry out in the shed for a while until it's fairly loose and dry. And then I often add a little extra organic garden soil, just so it's not too heavy when I put it on the garden, but you don't have to. My next batch of compost is going to go on the strawberry patch here while it's dormant. The reason I have tomato cages interspersed about is because it keeps my dogs from walking through it or doing other things on my strawberries. And this is slated for the next batch of compost. Dandelion started out in Europe, and then it traveled all over the world. Basically accidentally. It doesn't need to be, imported anywhere or exported from someplace, because it'll somehow find its way. Its seeds will get on all kinds of other things, and it'll It'll make it, and it did make it all over the world. Grows in almost any climate. This is January in a temperate area, and they popped up a bit early, loving the compost I gave them. And even if we get another real hard freeze, they may lay down a bit, shrink a bit, hide, but the roots don't die, and they'll pop back again. And right now they think it's spring for some reason. Their clock's a little screwed up, but it doesn't matter. We won't lose them. They're thriving here in this wonderful kitchen scrap compost. I'm going to show you some close-ups of how the dandelion has so wonderfully popped through the 2 inches of compost that I put on them. And I only put 2 inches on them so that it can pop through. I'm going to come around here so that it can pop through and not be smothered. As you can see, if we look closely, here's an example of it forcing its way through the compost. Right here. And if I loosen it a little, you can see there it is, and it didn't care that it had a couple inches of compost on it. Believe it or not, there's a bee in January. Here is one that came through with just a little plop of dirt on it. Here's another one that's coming through, and a little bit of dirt doesn't kill dandelion. If I put several inches on here, it would absolutely have smothered it. So I would say give it a 2-inch limit of your compost. And if I didn't say this before, I did mix my super rich compost with after letting it dry out. I mixed it with a little bit of organic garden soil. That's not necessary, but I did it just so that it would go on nice and loosely, so that when it is put on here, and here's some more popping through beautifully, really strong, so that when it does go on here, that it's not so heavy. And some of that just depends on how your compost turns out. Ours is extremely rich. Here's another one popping through. Ours is extremely rich, especially because we put the leftover yerba mate scraps after it's drank on here, which just makes it go gangbusters. Here's a little composted, let's see, ball of yerba mate right here, which is composted, but it's a little bit concentrated in one place. And in places where yerba mate is grown and used, yerba mate is just thrown on the garden, just literally thrown directly on the garden. It doesn't hurt it, and it can be used that way as a fertilizer. That is, after you've drank it, the moist parts left over in your teapot, or in your gourd or whatever you drink it out of. Then it just goes in your garden with composting. But we love to use it as a compost enhancer. There's a bee on my camera because we're having a warm spell mid-January, January 15th, which is why this dandelion decided to think it was spring and pop up early. Let's see if I get that bee on me to show you. You probably could hear it buzzing. And well, anyway, this is my super food whose seeds I didn't have to buy. I'm going to show you one that I don't normally go to flower and then to seed at this time of year, but here's one. Let's see here, and in a few days it'll just be all white and fuzzy. Let's see here, get it, you can see my hand. See that fuzzy part underneath? When that's all that's left and little bits of yellow fall off, it's ready for plucking. Actually, I'm going to demonstrate with this because these seeds are still viable. It's ready for plucking, and then you take just some empty spot and you push it in the dirt like this and gently put the dirt over it, and it's planted. I just want to show you how if you put only a couple inches or so of compost on your garden, not just dandelion, if it's a perennial, something that survives year round, it'll pop right through like this one. I'm pulling the dirt away just to give you an idea. Look how this one's in the process of popping through. This one right here is just starting to pop through. This little guy right here, you wouldn't know he was under there. There's a lot of them under here that have roots under here that you can't tell. This one's starting to pop through too. So a good guideline would be don't put more than a couple inches of compost on your garden on something that's already alive under there, because you don't want to smother it. And getting it dried out real well first really helps. And if you think it's still too heavy and really, just a little bit too moist or even too rich, just get a little bit of organic garden soil, and not quite equal parts, close to equal parts, and just mix it in. And here I wanted to show you a little bundle of yerba mate that has been composted. As I mentioned, it is the most phenomenal enhancer of composting, because it is so loaded with minerals. It never offends the soil, the microorganisms, and it doesn't offend your garden. Watch this. When I break it up, it's really great soil, or compost soil. It's completely composted. It just happened to stay kind of in a bundle because sometimes it didn't mix completely with the compost. Here's another one like that. And here's another one popping through right here. And some of them have already popped through. This here is mid-January in a temperate zone, and normally they wouldn't pop through this much. I normally feed them in the winter when they play dead. We're on top. They look like they're dead or dying. They're not, because the roots survive all year and they come back up. And this is normally what it would look like in the springtime as it pops back through after I've fed it in the winter. But we've had a lot of really warm weather, and when we get another hard freeze, if we do in February, can't say that word, in February, where I probably get more hard freezes, these dandelion leaves will kind of look kind of sad and flatten out and lay down a bit and shrink. And even if they completely disappeared, they'll pop right back in March, as soon as the real hard freezes are over. So this is, and again, I refer you to my any video I have on green foods, and one called Wild Gold Food and Remedy. It will explain why I do this, because it is the very best health boost that you can grow virtually anywhere, even in pots. And the seeds are free. Let's see here, where'd that one go? Here's one that normally wouldn't go to flower and then to seed until the springtime, right here. And I've picked several during these warm weeks here in January and in December. Normally, see the little white parts up underneath? Those are the seeds. Normally, I wait till all the yellow is gone. It's just a white puffball. But I'm going to demonstrate how you can plant this. You just simply pluck the top, find a spot that's more bare, or in a pot with dirt and or compost, and push it in the ground like that, and gently cover it, and it's planted. That's it. Enjoy your dandelion. And please refer to my other videos that explain why I do this, because it is my most potent, easy to raise, virtually free food and supplement and herbal medicine.